Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome back. I'm feeling 100%, in case some of you didn't get the message. I had a mild cold last week, so unfortunately, that's why tonight's concert was delayed a week. But I'm ready to go with a night of boogie and blues. I mentioned during my last performance that one of the concerts on my YouTube channel with the highest number of views was the previous concert of a night of boogie and blues. So we're going to do more blues and then later on boogie-woogie in tonight's performance. And I hope you will all enjoy this. I'm probably not going to play much real ragtime for you, even though that's what I'm known for. I like to try and prove that I can play other things. And we will start, of course, in the ragtime era, which is when the first commercial blues tunes were published. And in fact, I'm going to start tonight's concert with the very first published blues tune, at least the first with blues in the title. It was written by a man named Hart A. Wand from Oklahoma City. But even though he wrote it in Oklahoma City, it's called the Dallas Blues from 1912. Here's the Dallas Blues. Thank you so much. The Dallas Blues. One of the best records of that was made by an odd combination of musicians, Ted Lewis and his jazz band, along with Fats Waller. It was kind of unusual in those days for a white band to be recording with a black musician like Fats Waller, but they made a couple of sides together, only two or three. It was Dallas Blues and Royal Garden Blues, and they're really awesome hot records. Yeah, that's the Dallas Blues, and there were certainly 12-bar blues strains that stretch back much further than the Dallas Blues. For instance, Frankie and Johnny, the old song from the early 1900s, is one of the first tunes that is formatted in a 12-bar blues. But I'm not going to play that for you. Yeah, Leo, sure, I'll play Royal Garden Blues tonight. As I started preparing for this concert 2 weeks ago at this point, I realized I really do know an awful lot of the early blues tunes. Not quite as much boogie-woogie, but quite a bit of that now as well. And yeah, I'll try and get to as many requests tonight as I can as well. And one of the inspirations behind my interest in early blues was Johnny Maddox. This was something that he studied a lot. He played a lot of these tunes. And in fact, in the early 50s, Johnny met W.C. Handy, who was called the father of the blues. And I can tell you a little bit about that. He went to the W.C. Handy Publishing Company in New York. I would guess it would have been in about 1952 when Johnny was in New York, early 50s. And he ended up spending the whole day with Mr. Handy. He invited Johnny to his home, and Johnny had dinner with him and his whole family. He played for him. In fact, Handy liked the way Johnny played so much, he called him the white boy with the colored fingers, which, of course, was a great compliment. And so I'll play a Handy tune for you next, which is one of the first that was composed purposefully in the 12-bar blues format. He wrote it in 1909, and the original title of it was Mr. Crump. It was named for E.H. Crump, who was running for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Then the tune was published a few years later in 1912, and it was called the Memphis Blues. So here's W.C. Handy's Memphis Blues. And that's the Memphis Blues. Thank you very much. Years later, W.C. Handy claimed that this break in the music was the first written jazz break in the history of popular music. That can be seen in advertisements on W.C. Handy's sheet music. And he's quite possibly right. It's not a claim that would be easy to disprove. Let's put it that way. Okay. Well, let me check all the websites, make sure they're all working. Hey, Dwayne's listening from Memphis. So glad you got to hear that. Yes, and Harry, Memphis Blues, the verse to the tune, there's actually 3 parts to it, but there is one part that sounds exactly like the old piano roll blues. The melody's just ever so slightly different, but it is very similar. I noticed that years ago. Well, in the very earliest days, blues and ragtime were very similar. In fact, I was going to mention that this is one of the things that Johnny talked to Handy about at length, which is, what tempo do you play the blues? And in the very earliest period, and by that I mean the 1910s, blues were not played real slow. They were played more up-tempo for dancing. I'm sure I will do some more slow blues later in tonight's concert, but for now, let's do another one of these up-tempo fun numbers from the very earliest years. And this is a tune that I found in a friend's sheet music collection. That's Fred Youngkin's from Thurmont, Maryland. And I hadn't played it in a while, so I thought I would dig it out and show you the original sheet music cover. Some of the music I'm playing tonight is kind of rare and valuable, so I'm not going to take it out of the sleeve, but hopefully you can see the cover pretty well. This was written in 1919, and it's called Play For Me Those Juarez Blues. Tristezas de Juarez. Maybe someone can translate that for me. And it's the strangest thing. The music was published in Minnesota, but it features a band from El Paso, Texas on the cover of the music. And the verse to this tune is more like a tango. It's quite unusual. It just goes to show you that the term blues, not unlike ragtime and jazz, were just used to describe all kinds of popular music. And so here is those Juarez Blues. you so much. Play for me those Juarez Blues. Ah, tristezas just means sad things. It's a Spanish word for blues. Okay, the Blues of Juarez. That's basically the subtitle of the tune. Well, this is fantastic. We're almost up to 100 viewers here on YouTube. I appreciate it all, folks, and I do accept virtual tips for these concerts. If you want to send in a tip, you can do it on PayPal or Venmo. No obligation, of course, but it is very helpful to my career. Some of you have been very generous and helps me keep this kind of music alive. It's even sans COVID, it's very, very difficult to book enough concerts to make a living doing this. And these virtual performances have really helped me get closer to doing that. I hope Fred Youngkin's got to hear that tune. Usually they listen every Sunday night, Fred and Karen. If not, I'll just have to remind him later. Yeah, okay. Leo, yeah, COVID sucks. Yeah, that's right. I had it. It was awful. Well, let's do some more music by W.C. Handy. And, of course, I'm happy to take requests as usual. I imagine I can get to quite a few tonight if you want to go ahead and send in some requests. I see one here for Cowcow Boogie. I don't know Cowcow Boogie, but I do know Cowcow Blues. Very often I like to tell the history of the music chronologically as I go through a concert, so stick around for just a little bit and I might do that. Oh yeah, I figured I couldn't get away without playing St. Louis Blues tonight. Oh, I've got a listener from Australia. Thank you very much. Let's do some more music by W.C. Handy. In fact, what I'm going to play for you next is the only instrumental rag that Handy ever wrote, written in 1916. And just like Yellow Dog Blues, the original title was Ole Miss Rag, and he later changed it to Blues without changing a note of the music. And the Ole Miss Rag, the other thing that's interesting about it is that Scott Joplin recorded it on a hand-played player piano roll. So I include a few licks from the Joplin piano roll. He must have either known Handy personally or admired his music. It could have been both. We don't know for certain. Here is W.C. Handy's Ole Miss Rag. Miss Rag, thank you very much. I saw a question from Daryl. Yeah, I think I have played Oh Miss Rag on previous virtual concerts, probably last year's Night of Boogie and Blues. I do keep a list of most of what I play on the virtual concerts on my computer, although the tunes change during the performance. I just change my mind about what I want to play, or I get a request. I do try and look back and make sure I don't repeat quite as many tunes. Honky Tonk Train Blues, yeah, of course I'm going to do that after a while. I want to do another handy tune for you before I get too much further along in the concert. So let me do one that personally I haven't played as often. I'm going to do one from this same year, I believe, 1916, maybe 1917. And this was named after Memphis, Tennessee as well. The famous Beale Street Blues by W.C. Handy. Handy's tunes are very melodic, and they have more to them than just the same three chords repeated over and over. That's one reason I admire his music a lot. And as I said, in the early days, blues and ragtime were not that different. The only difference in the blues is, of course, usually the 12-bar format, and you hear a lot more flat third and flat seventh, what you might call blue notes in the music. So there'll be a quiz later. Anyhow, Beale Street Blues. Street Blues. Thank you so much. Oh, Daryl, you were asking about the piano roll of Oh Miss Rag. I have not played the piano roll on a concert. And frankly, I think my live performance probably sounds much better because that is an early hand-played roll and has no expression whatsoever. But that's as much as I'll say about, or should say about that, I suppose. Well, I'm going to move on from the music of W.C. Handy and play a piece for you that was written by one of the greatest ragtime composers. We're still in the early ragtime period here. And this is called the Weary Blues. It was written by Artie Matthews, who wrote the 5 pastime rags. I imagine the publisher, John Stark, asked him to write something in this vein simply because blues were becoming a craze at the time in 1915. And the interesting thing about the Weary Blues is that it includes the very first notated walking bass line in the left hand for the piano, which later became known as Boogie-woogie. You hear it in the second part of this piece. A lot of traditional jazz bands adopted this tune, and they often played it quite up-tempo, even though it's called the Weary Blues. I have Clarence Williams' wonderful record of this from 1923, which I believe is also the first recorded boogie-woogie walking bass line. The Weary Blues. And there's the Weary Blues. Thank you so much, everybody. You know, I forgot I have some sheet music covers sitting here on the piano to show you. In fact, I meant to show this earlier. This is a very early edition of Dallas Blues, which was the first tune I played tonight. You probably can't see much of the cover on the computer there, but there are pictures of African-American children surrounding the title, Dallas Blues. And I believe that is the first edition of it. There is another one with more of a white background on the cover, Johnny Maddox told me that was the first edition. I think it is, and I'm very lucky to have it because on the inside of the music it almost looks like the music is handwritten. That's what makes me think it's the very earliest edition, even though it's a small size piece of music, which is kind of unusual. Let me show you another real treasure from my sheet music collection. This is one of my most prized possessions. We're going to do the Crazy Blues. I'll play this for you next. And the Crazy Blues was written in 1920 by Perry Bradford, whose nickname was Mule. Johnny met him too. He said, boy, he really looked like a mule. And the cover of the music features Mamie Smith and her jazz hounds. And I'll show you this. And also in her band was Willie the Lion Smith. This is undoubtedly the first and earliest Willie the Lion Smith sheet music cover. And my copy is autographed for my late friend Mike Montgomery, one of the great music collectors from Detroit, Michigan. And so I feel so lucky to have this. I have not seen many autographs of Willie the Lion over the years, and this is inscribed to Mike. So we're going to do Crazy Blues next, which was supposedly the first really important blues record by a black female blues singer. And I've been playing a little medley out of two tunes. I don't know why, I just like them both. The Crazy Blues, and a tune written by Lemuel Fowler, who was a great blues pianist from Chicago in the 1920s. And this was probably one of his more minor hits from 1922. It's called He May Be Your Man, But He Comes to See Me Sometimes. So here's both of these tunes, the Crazy Blues and He May Be Your Man, But He Comes to See Me Sometimes. so much. A couple more of the blues tunes of the early 20s. Okay, well, is the person who asked about Cowcow Boogie still here? Maybe I'll play, this is Cowcow Blues, actually, recorded by Cowcow Davenport, I believe in 1928. And this is somewhere between boogie and blues. It's I'm not quite sure how to describe it. It's, I suppose, a little bit more like boogie-woogie, medium tempo boogie-woogie tunes. So let me do Cowcow Blues for you next. Cowcow Blues. Thank you so much, everybody. A Starscream Pierce. He says, hot dog, this might even be better than Cowcow Boogie. Well, I'm glad you helped me think of the tune. I appreciate it. I was kind of thinking about playing that anyway. I learned it, I don't do this very often, but I pretty much learned that by ear. And instead of learning it off the original Cowcow Davenport record, I learned it off a recording by Honky Parker, who's really become one of my favorite pianists. He did an album called Honky Parker and His Backwoods Boys, which is all early blues tunes like this, and it's absolutely one of my favorite albums. Every note is played with beauty and passion. It's absolutely outstanding record. Okay, well, now I have a couple other things I want to play for you, which I haven't played very often. We're going to do a couple of tunes by Jelly Roll Morton, and this is an example of how, in the early days, the 12-bar format for blues music really was greatly exaggerated. The term blues was used for many different kinds of music. In fact, these would be hard to consider true blues tunes at all, but the blues is in the title, so it fits in for tonight's concert. The first one I'm going to do is called The Dead Man Blues by Jelly Roll Morton. Might have to play this again before too long since Halloween's coming up, but I imagine it's the kind of thing Morton wrote in imitation of jazz bands playing at a funeral in New Orleans. So here's Jelly Roll Morton's Dead Man Blues. Blues. Thank you so much, folks. Jelly Roll Morton, my fave. Yeah, I went through a couple of years where I guess I didn't play that much of Jelly Roll Morton's music, but he really was one of the most phenomenal musicians of the early jazz period. Of course, he claimed that he invented jazz. That might have been a stretch, but he was certainly the most important piano player, bar none, that came out of New Orleans, or New Orleans, whichever it is. And I was at the Central Pennsylvania Ragtime Festival a few weeks ago, and the other musicians all got together and decided they were going to play a Jelly Roll Morton tune, which I had never performed. And I realized, this tune is really a jazz standard that I need to know. So over the last week or two, I sat down and I learned the tune. It's called the Wolverine Blues. So I'll play that for you now. Certainly my first performance of it on a virtual concert. And it has three parts to it. I learned it off of a transcription, which is close to the way Morton himself played it. The original sheet music is sitting right here on the piano. Jelly Roll Morton's music was all published by the Melrose Brothers in Chicago in the 1920s, and they usually put their names, both of the brothers, on his music, even though they had almost nothing to do with writing it. All they did was write a few words for this piece, and the original sheet music is almost nothing like Jelly Roll Morton played it. So I'm going to do my best to imitate his style now. Jelly Roll Morton's Wolverine Blues. Wolverine Blues. Thank you so much, folks. Greetings to my friends in Hecktown, Tennessee. I can't believe you're still listening. That's fantastic. And we have somebody down under, Bach addict. How neat. Well, let me know what you would all like to hear. I've only gotten hardly one request yet. So go ahead and send me in some requests here, folks. Oh, how neat. Jason says, just saw Adam at the Diamond Bell Saloon. Well, thanks for the kind words. Oh, got a number of people on Twitch tonight, too. I was going to check over here. Sometimes I forget about Twitch because I don't have as many viewers. Backseat Sauceman, thank you. Subscribed for 3 months. Wow. Wheelman Mitch, awesome. Thanks for joining me. I do have tons of viewers on Facebook. The Facebook numbers are up much higher, just like they were 2 weeks ago. Appreciate that, folks. So, as such, go ahead and send in some requests. I have quite a few more things on my list I want to get to tonight, but if I can answer some requests, I certainly want to do it. Yeah, Deep Henderson. I could play that for you. I don't see why not. Yeah, I've certainly got time for it too. So let me do that. This is for Amy Lundgren. She wants to hear Deep Henderson. This is a tune from the late 20s, which is, it's not really a blues or a boogie, but it has blue chord progressions. It has blue notes and that kind of thing. And the subtitle may even involve the word blues. I have to look at the sheet music. Anyhow, this was written by Fred Rose, who was a major 20s pop songwriter who later became very important in the country music field. He wrote about half of Hank Williams' hits. We're going to do Deep Henderson. you so much. There's Deep Henderson, complete with the 1920s style off-key ending. I created that arrangement in part through the original orchestration of the piece, which was written by Doc Cook, who was the composer of a tune in the ragtime era called Blame It on the Blues. I've asked Vince Giordano for very few favors in my musical career, but one I thought was important enough was to ask him to scan the orchestration for Deep Henderson for me. And that's where that came from. The same arrangement was used by the Coon Sanders Nighthawks, and I think King Oliver's band as well. So that's a little bit behind what's behind Deep Henderson. Boy, 118 viewers on Facebook. You know, while I'm thinking about it, don't forget to hit the like button, and that's on all three websites because it helps with the social media algorithms. Thank you. Thank you for doing that, folks. I saw a request from Karen Youngkins for Long Lost Blues. Did you hear I played Juarez Blues earlier tonight, the tune I found at your house? I can try and play Long Lost Blues for you real quick. This is another ragtime era tune, which must have been kind of a folk melody at the time. It was used years later in the 50s as a rock and roll tune called I Hear You Knockin', But You Can't Come In. It's the same melody as the Long Lost Blues. So let me just rip off the Long Lost Blues now. Thank you so much. There's a little bit of the Long Lost Blues. And I know I played that on a previous concert where I dug out the sheet music and played the verse that was written for the tune. But all I remember now is the chorus, such as it is. Well, usually at this point during the concert, I mention that I do accept virtual tips for these performances. There's no obligation, but it is very helpful to me. I live in a tourist town, and for some reason it's kind of expensive. You can send in tips on PayPal or Venmo, and if you don't trust PayPal, there's a P.O. box on my website for checks as well. And incidentally, you can still order all of my CDs directly on my own website. I updated my website about 2 years ago and made it so you can order the CDs directly from me. And a lot of work has gone into those. They're a little bit more professional in a sense because they're not live like these virtual concerts are. And they also come with a lot of really wonderful packaging. My producer, Brian Wright from Rivermont Records, does a really outstanding and scholarly job on his productions. So that's a little bit about that. Let's delve into some real boogie-woogie now. And I'd like to play for you a tune which I would consider the very first boogie-woogie record, even though boogie is not in the title. It was 1927, and Meade Lux Lewis went in and made a record for Paramount, which had a lot of black artists at the time, and it's called the Honky Train Blues. And really, boogie-woogie is no different than blues. It's just a little faster, and it includes different patterns, slightly different patterns in the left hand. Now, even though boogie-woogie did not reach records until the late 1920s, the style undoubtedly dates back decades before that. In fact, at one time it would have been called ragtime, just like all other popular music. But for now, here is Meade Lux Lewis and the Honky Tonk Train Blues. Honky Tonk Train Blues. Thank you so much, everybody. Well, Meade Lux Lewis, I think, is my favorite of all the great boogie-woogie pianists. There are three that were considered the very greatest: Pete Johnson, Albert Ammons, and Meade Lux Lewis. Now, he made that record of the Honky Tonk Train in 1927. The very next year, 1928, the first record with boogie-woogie in the title was released, which was made by Pinetop Smith from Chicago. Most of these guys were from Chicago. And this tune, I don't know that it really took off when the record was first made, but years later, Tommy Dorsey and his orchestra recorded this, which made it much more famous. It's called Pine Top's Original Boogie-woogie, and this is just kind of my own take on it. Pine Top's Boogie-woogie. Pine Top's Boogie-woogie. Thank you very much, folks. Yeah, the numbers really are up, Amy. That's fantastic. I don't know why the numbers are so much higher on Facebook. I'm suspicious that it has something to do with the Facebook algorithms, and that they are in charge of who sees how many posts that people make. And I didn't do any live streams for the entire month of September because I wasn't home. And then I come back a month later and I have twice as many viewers on Facebook. I'm just kind of suspicious, and I'm sure Facebook is in control of what we see. That's all I'm going to say. Now, let me see. I want to do a tune another one that I have never performed for you, using the music just as a crutch here, but this is what you might call a slow boogie, from a little bit later in the period. I've hardly ever played any music by Freddie Slack, but this is a tune that was a minor hit for Freddie Slack and his orchestra in the early 40s. The copyright is 1940. And it's called Strange Cargo, subtitled A Boogie-woogie Nocturne. It's has a neat sound to it. And in fact, there's three composers here listed: Freddie Slack, Ray McKinley, and Will Bradley, all popular band leaders of the 1940s. I imagine it was mostly Freddie Slack that wrote this. I'm not 100% sure. But I want to play this for you next. Strange Cargo. Strange Cargo. Thank you very much, folks. Well, let's do some more Meadlux Lewis. I've really never played any of the music of Ammons or Johnson. It's quite similar to Lewis, and I was mostly inspired to learn a lot of these boogie-woogie tunes by Bob Seeley, who is a good dear friend of mine that I have known for almost 20 years, probably, since I was about 12 years old. I was very lucky to live near him in Michigan and get to hear him play a lot. Certainly one of the greatest boogie-woogie pianists that ever lived. And he was a personal friend of Meadlux Lewis. Bob grew up in Detroit, spent his whole life there, and then retired and moved down to Florida. He's in I think somewhere near the panhandle of Florida. And he's about 94, maybe almost 95 now. And I really just think Bob is outstanding. And I've learned a lot of tunes from him over the years. So here's another one that I was inspired to learn by his recording. which is not exactly like the original record, but then again, neither is my performance. Doesn't matter, really. This is taken from a record that Meade Lux Lewis made called Boogie-woogie at the Philharmonic. And I've tried to learn this kind of the way Bob played it. I don't have the left-hand pattern quite like Meade Lux Lewis, but here is Boogie at the Philharmonic, a really hot, fast boogie-woogie in the style of Meade Lux Lewis. Boogie-woogie at the Philharmonic. Thank you so much, folks. Yeah, that's the real authentic boogie-woogie is what I would call it. That piece is quite similar to another one that I learned by Meade Lux Lewis called Chicago Flyer. It's a lot of the same licks. It's quite similar. Let me check all the websites here. Yeah. Hey, Ted. He says Bob would be very proud of you. You just need the Panama hat. Yeah. I sure miss getting to see him play. Charles says, not ragtime, but fun. Yes, sir. I like to try and do things besides ragtime. I don't know why I say that's what I play, and people assume that's all that I play. It's just very difficult to, well, see, it's difficult to describe genres of music. You know, some of the tunes I'm playing tonight would be considered jazz, really, by a technical definitions, but they're called blues in the title of the piece of music. So, you know, what's jazz? What's blues? Well, I don't know. I just know It has a few more blue notes in it. That's about all there is to it. Let's do some more Meade Lux Lewis. Here's kind of a medium tempo boogie, which is probably one of his more popular tunes outside of the Honky Tonk Train. Both Honky Tonk Train and this one were recorded by Bob Crosby and his orchestra in the late 30s, which helped to then again revive boogie-woogie music during World War II. As Bob Seeley rightly points out, boogie-woogie was really the #1 popular style of music during World War II. And Meade Lux Lewis, Hammonds and Johnson, they came back and they appeared in movies and they played at Carnegie Hall. And all that happened during the World War II period. This is called the Yancey Special, named for the great blues pianist Jimmy Yancey, but written by Meade Lux Lewis. And like many of these tunes, it imitates the sound of a steam train. That's why it's called the Yancey Special. Thank you so much. The Yancey Special, Meade Lux Lewis. Oh, hello there to Joe Sell, my dear friend in Phoenix, Arizona. Whatever you play, Adam, is special. Well, I appreciate that. You know, there's only about one thing I've learned in almost 20 years as a professional musician, like performing musician, which is that you can't please everybody. No matter what you play, you can't please everybody. I love these boogie-woogie tunes. I probably only know 8 or 10 or 12 of them if I added it up. And I saw someone commented, well, they prefer the ragtime. I suppose personally I do too. I don't want to hear boogie-woogie all night long and only that. There's a stronger melodic content in, like, say, the classic rags and so forth. But I did see some requests here from Leo Roth. I'll try and get to those in just a second, Leo. I have room for about one more. If anybody has another request, send it in to me now. Let me check all 3 websites. This will be about the last request I can take for the night, and I'm going to do Leo's tunes. The Yancey special sounds like a train the Durango and Silverton should have on their schedule. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, still over 100 viewers on Facebook. That's fantastic, and thank you, folks. Thanks for all the emotes over here on Twitch. Backseat Sauceman. Cool. And Wheelman Mitch. It takes a minute for the requests to come in on the chat, you know, so I might just kind of hesitate here for a minute. I hate to do that. Well, okay. I see Amy Lundgren has mentioned the tune I was going to play anyway. I'm going to go back to the music of W.C. Handy now, maybe in the concert with a couple of his tunes, because Leo asked me for the same one. We're going to do W.C. Handy's great Yellow Dog Blues, written in 1914, the same year as the St. Louis Blues. And the Yellow Dog, the melody of the tune is based on a tune that was written the year before, 1913, by Shelton Brooks, called I Wonder Where My Easy Rider's Gone, which was kind of a risque song at the time that was introduced by Sophie Tucker and later performed by Mae West in one of her movies. And so Handy answered the tune by writing the Yellow Dog Blues. And he said, your easy rider's gone where the Southern crossed the Yellow Dog, which meant where the Yazoo Delta Railroad crossed the Southern Railroad at Moorhead, Mississippi. The Yazoo Delta Line, the nickname for it was the Yellow Dog Line, so Handy wrote the Yellow Dog Blues. Yellow Dog Blues. Thank you so much, folks. I've loved playing that for years. Played it many, many times. It's almost note for note the way Johnny Maddox played it. And I'm sure some of you might recognize that. I'm not sure how many more tunes I'll play tonight. I'm not getting any more requests here that I haven't thought of myself. I may only do one more, and it's just going to be the grand finale. But before I do that, let me mention that I will play a virtual concert next Sunday night. I have a local silent film performance next Sunday, October 22nd, and that's at the Durango Art Center at 2 o'clock. If you want to come, I'm doing 3 silent film shorts, 2 with Laurel and Hardy and 1 with Harold Lloyd, 2 of which are Halloween themed. It should be very fun, and that's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'm going to have dinner and come on home and play another virtual concert for you. And I'm not 100% certain what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to take up an idea that I got from Karen Yunkins, a good friend of mine, and play for you a concert. And I may just call it Location, because a big part of what I do when I'm entertaining the general public is play tunes about different states and songs from different countries. Now, I have done a concert where I went around the United States and played songs about all the different states. I have done an international night where I played a lot of Latin music and French and German and so forth. But maybe I'll just do all of the above and make a fun concert out of it. It would leave me plenty of room for requests next week, and I think I'll do that. Tom, I see your request here on YouTube. I'm running out of time now, so I already did a couple of Jelly Roll Morton tunes. I'm afraid I'm going to run out of time for another one tonight because I do want to do W.C. Handy's famous St. Louis Blues. I've already got a request for that as well, and I want to do my whole Sunday night arrangement for you, starting out slow, like you might have heard the tune played in later years, then in ragtime, the way it was originally written, and finally Boogie-woogie. Here is Handy's famous St. Louis Blues. St. Louis Blues with a little extra boogie-woogie. Thank you so much, folks. Thank you for listening tonight. I appreciate each and every one of you, and have missed doing the virtual concerts more often over the last few weeks. So there will definitely be another one next week. I'm toying with the idea of a theme like location, or locations around the world, something like that. It should be fun. Trip around the world. And thank you also for those virtual tips. It is very helpful. Much appreciated. Thanks so much, and good night for now, folks. We'll see you next Sunday night.